Hello, eternal family. Welcome to Post-Mormon Postmortem, the podcast where we lovingly sift through the ashes of our former faith, one bizarre belief and repressed memory at a time. I'm your host, Hannah.
And I'm your host, Jess.
Hannah and Jess, we got away. Now we're unpacking what they won't say. Behind temple walls and cover-ups. We're pouring tea in your coffee cups. It's the Post-Mormon Postmortem. Digging up what they want forgotten. Trauma, truth, and crime, yeah, we're surviving. It's Post-Mormon Postmortem.
Welcome back to Post-Mormon Postmortem Foundations, our mini-series for Never Mormons who want to understand what the hell we might be talking about. Last time we talked about golden plates, magic stones in hats, and becoming gods of your own planets. And now we're diving into temple culture and answering the question, is it sacred or is it secret? And before we go any further, I was just thinking, this is quite a sensitive topic because it involves people's dearly held religious beliefs. But I also remember having the same conversation with one of my family members, which was, if you applied the same consideration for other people's sacred beliefs, that would be one thing. But to say that nobody is allowed to speak about the temple ceremony because it's sacred to you, and in the same breath or in the same conversation, talking about the sacred beliefs of other belief systems, but having no qualms about breaking those down with an analysis. The standards have to be the same across the board. It's either like, these are sacred beliefs and therefore they're out of bounds for critique, and the same applies for everybody else's sacred beliefs, or yours are equally up for critique. That's what I'm saying.
Agreed. Yeah. And when people say, well, this is my belief and this is what my Bible says, or this is what my church holds dear and sacred, that's great. It is true for you. It's not true for me. So that's not a standard that I'm willing to adhere to. But, when we're talking about temples and what goes on there, it's really the most exclusive club that if you're not a Mormon, you've never heard of. So these are buildings where your Mormon friends disappear for hours doing ceremonies they can't tell you about, where non-members can't attend their own children's weddings, and there's special underwear involved. So if you've ever wondered why your Mormon neighbor suddenly started wearing different clothes or why you weren't invited to their temple wedding, this episode is for you.
Yeah, so let's start. How do you get into the temple? Because obviously not anybody can just walk in. So it starts with the temple recommend. And now, admittedly, it has been a long time from my own experience. So I cannot imagine that they employ the same little paper recommend. It was literally like a little flimsy piece of signed paper, which, I mean, I'm sure now it seems like you would need like a QR code or something.
My mom was talking about a church app the other day. She's like, oh, these were all on the church app. And I was like, the what?
One would think, especially if you wanted to prevent bad actors from getting in. However, I can't imagine anybody would be that motivated, but obviously historically they definitely have been. Regardless, you have to have a temple recommend. Whether it is now, it's still a literal piece of paper. I couldn't say. But the interview that is required to get the temple recommend starts with your bishop and then progresses to a member of the stake presidency. So this is your worthiness interview where you're asked a bunch of questions about your lifestyle, your behavior, your thoughts, which is wild, and who you affiliate with. And then once you prove your worthiness by answering the questions, and bear in mind, you know the correct answers to the questions, so anybody could just sit and fake it. And then you are, deemed worthy enough to enter the house of the Lord. My former husband, bless his heart, when we lived in Hawaii, our state president was the most egotistical state president. Sorry, I should have just said we had a state president. Our state president was the same as every other state president. Well, there are some good ones out there, but no, for the most part, he fit the bill. And my husband at the time had an earring, and he sat in his temple recommend interview, and the state president told him that he needed to remove the earring or he wasn't giving him a temple recommend.
Holy shit.
And he needed to do it immediately, on
In
the
front of
spot,
him.
now, in front of me, like a parent.
Wow.
So my husband felt like, here are his choices. Take out this earring, which is my choice, my autonomy, my body sovereignty, my identity, or I'm going to walk out of here without a temple recommend and have to tell my wife why we're not going to the temple. So he, like a child called to the carpet, took out his earring in front of this motherfucker. And it's sort of like, okay, you happy? Thank you. Can I have my temple recommend now? But anyway, all that to say, this is just anecdotal, personal experience.
Did he put it back in or did he keep it out forever?
I think he was trying to toe the line at that time. And it was, I think he thought, this guy has really overstepped. This is well out of line. This guy's an asshole. I think he pretty much thought. And simultaneously, well, that's who's been put in charge of whether or not I
get to go. Wow.
Yeah, so what am I going to do? I don't think he put it back in, is the short answer to your question. Anyway, so you're also asked, do you have a testimony of Jesus Christ and his atonement? I mean, are you going to say no to that? It's sort of a gimme, isn't it? Do you sustain the president of the church as prophet, seer, and revelator? Do you pay a full tithe? Well, that could get tricky, and that goes along with what we said formerly about your tithing settlement interview. It's a different interview. God, the Mormons love meetings. Do you keep the word of wisdom? This would be the time to confess if you don't, I guess, right? Like, no, at New Year's, I just can't help myself. Do you strive to keep the covenants you've made? And so on and so forth.
It's a lot. I mean, so really, I just want to make everybody clear on this issue. Your worthiness to enter God's house is determined by a volunteer with zero professional training, asking you detailed questions. And those questions might be about your orgasms, might be about your caffeine intake, because Heavenly Father apparently requires your bishop, who's probably an accountant or a manager of a car dealership, to quiz you about the innermost workings of your lives. So it gets really personal. He'll ask about your sexual worthiness, whether you're morally clean, whether you're involved in any sexual relationships outside of marriage, and if you're not married, whether you're maintaining the law of chastity. If you're married, you still get questions. They might ask about the nature of your intimate relationships with your spouse. So you don't feel like you're getting off just because you're married. You need to be thinking about whether what you're doing in the privacy of your own bedroom is going to pass the muster with whoever the interviewee is. So grown adults are being questioned about their private lives by local volunteers. As I said, no professional training in counseling or psychology, because the whole process, it assumes religious authority figures can and should judge your personal worthiness. This is one of the many, many reasons that I left the church. You have to maintain this recommend. As Hannah mentioned, it expires every 2 years, and you go through the interviews again. If you fail to meet any of the standards, then your recommend gets taken away. You can't attend the temple. And in Mormon theology, this means you can't receive the ordinances that are necessary for the highest degree of salvation.
Yeah. So if you believe, or if you're even trying to believe, it's like you will go along with these requirements because what is at stake is pretty high.
Yeah. I mean, the Mormon salvation system really works like a caste system. You're either in celestial kingdom material or you're not. And your bishop gets to decide which tier you're in based on whether you touched yourself last Tuesday.
So the main ceremony in the temple is called the endowment. The idea is that this is where you would go before you get married and go on a mission to receive these rites, these special ceremonies where you get given a new name, which is revealed to you and is the name that you'll be called on the morning of the first resurrection. So when Jesus comes back, story for another day, how he is going to come all full of vengeance. Mormons love that. So when Jesus comes back and everyone else is destroyed, yay, you got to remember your name, your new name. I can't remember my new name. I'm pretty sure it's something very like plain. It's either Rachel or Sarah. It's either Rachel or Sarah, I'm sure. I mean, obviously, like that's a lot of pressure to remember your new name. And then your husband gets told your new name, but you don't get told his. Well, he needs
wait.
it. He's gonna call you on the morning of the first resurrection. He needs to know what name to call you by. And then you've got to be like a dog whistle, like, oh,
Whoa, that's me.
that's me. Yeah, go find your master.
I have to say, like, aren't Sarah and Rachel are two of the most biblical names that they could give women. So I'm thinking it's probably 50-50. Like, the
So
most
absolutely. Well, all the names are taken from the Bible, I'm pretty sure. But there are some wild Bible names you've never heard of, because it would be like pages of genealogy where it's like so-and-so was begat by so-and-so was begat by so-and-so.
Yeah.
So if you go through those names, you're like, Hebzibah, what? Because you've never known that these were Bible names, right? So I'm pretty sure they will take it from the Bible. And if you forget your new name, there's a database, because it all depends on the day that you go through. So they just rotate. They've basically got a rotation, and then it starts again. So if you say, I went through on January 11th, 1952, you could be told, reminder what your new name was. But I just have to say real quick about the new name. You're given your new name. And that's what for your ceremony. But every subsequent time you go through the temple, you're going through for someone else. And in that case, you have to take on their new name, because every time you go through, you have to, instead of mentally saying, I, Hannah, do solemnly promise and swear to keep these covenants, right? Otherwise, on pain of death, you have to say the name of the person you're going through for. So if I was going through on behalf of you, I would say, I, Jess, do solemnly swear in my head, right?
Please don't do that for me.
Because I'm taking your place. But then when you have to reveal your new name, when you get to the curtain portion of the ceremony, where a hand comes through the veil and you have to give all the right passwords, and one of the passwords is your new name. So the new name for Jess would be whatever it was that day for everybody else going through. Okay, so my Hannah's new name might be Sarah, but when I go through for you, Jess, on that day, the new name is Elizabeth. Everybody going through this day is given the new name Elizabeth. Okay, it's not it's a day thing, it's a date thing. So I go through the curtain, right? And then they want my new name. And I say Elizabeth, because that's the new name I was given during the washing and anointing. Because you have to go through all of it for the person. You have to go through the washing and anointing for the person. You do it all again. This is why people go through their own endowments and swear to God they are never going back.
Okay, so wait, can we pause for a moment? I have some clarifying questions. But so
I'll try my best.
this is like, but it's highlighting my own ignorance, having never gone through a temple marriage or an endowment. This sounds so much like the baptism for the dead process, which I did do, where you're doing it on behalf of somebody else. So wait, so when you're doing an endowment for someone else, is that like their next step? Like it's supposedly someone who got baptized and now they need to get their endowment?
Correct.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so like the
Wow.
teenagers
Okay.
would do those, and then those names would then roll onto the endowment portion, and then the sealing portion. So you roll up to the temple when it's not your turn. You've done your stuff, right? And now you're supposed to go back regularly. That is part of being a faithful member.
Right. Yeah, I think my parents go once a week or something.
I had a goal once to go weekly, and I did it, and it nearly killed me. I don't know how long I sustained it for, but my husband at the time, he was in his 20s doing a PhD. We had 2 kids, and he was like, enough. This is bullshit. I am not doing this anymore. I can't pretend any longer. And so my response, in a typical disordered, enmeshed, coming from a dysfunctional family, was to turn to my parents and say, what should I do here? And they said, like, double down on your temple
Wow.
attendance.
Make up for him.
The light in your countenance will be enough to make him be like, God damn, I want that back. You know, he's green with envy when he sees me coming home from the temple. That's the idea.
Only because he's got to take care of the 2 kids while you're gone, right?
That's the delusion you're living in, right? So you've done your turn, and now you're doing it on behalf of other people. And I remember saying to my mum, this is also just all the admin involved. Why can't Heavenly Father just be like, you're all endowed in the, after everyone's died? Like, why do we have to keep doing it? She's like, you've got to keep reminding yourself of the covenants that you've made, right? So this is where you go back.
Reinforce your membership in this exclusive
You've
club.
got to reinforce your fear of what you stand to lose. So all this to say, there's one time I go and I get given the new name, pick a name.
Pollyanna.
Oh, Pollyanna, I like that. I get given the new name Pollyanna. So the person I'm going through for, her name's Pollyanna, right? She was born in like Ohio in 1850s. So you got it printed on a little slip that they give you because they ask you, are you bringing your own names today or do you need names? Because you might say, oh no, I'm doing it for my family.
I did my own research. I found a bunch of dead people.
But I'm like, no, I'm covered. My mum and dad have done all my family, so I'm good. So give me a straggler who has no loved ones to do their work for them. So they give you a name. So I've got this slip of paper. Her name's Pollyanna Jones from Ohio. And then you hand it to the worker who's giving you your washing and anointing endowment. And she goes, okay, Pollyanna Jones, goes through the script, right? And she goes, and I give you a new name today. And your new name is Pollyanna. And I'm thinking, that's a coincidence. That's so weird that the new name is the same name, but it was actually a common name. So let's say it was like Elizabeth or Emma or Sarah or Rachel, right? So Rachel Jones, I give you the new name Rachel. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess this person's got the same new name.
No?
That's what it is. When they get to the curtain and they're like, give me your new name. And I say the name, they're like, that's not the name. And I'm like, that's what they told me. So this woman had obviously just been reading, I guess I should have clarified. Are you sure that's the new name as well as the name that's been given? But I just went with it. And it created a great big kerfuffle at the curtain, which if you've had your endowment, then you can picture that all of a sudden, what? That's not the new name. She's been going through the whole thing all wrong. And of course they looked at me like I was a total fucking simpleton for not being able to hold onto a name in my head. And it was like, I'm not going to argue this, but that's the name I was given. She said that name, okay? She said that name. So you might want to not have volunteers who are quite ready with one foot in the grave, yeah. Anyway, you also learn not only your new name, you have to go through this whole spiel, a play of like the plan of salvation and creation. And most of the ceremony involves watching a video of people acting out being Adam and Eve in the garden, but you never see the guy's nipples. I'm obsessed with male nipples in the temple, if you've watched our TikToks, where I thought that that would be revealed in the temple because there's symbols on the temple garment that are in the place of the nipples. And I was like, well, you say that we're going to learn all the cool shit once we get there. So I assume we're going to learn why men have nipples
and why do they not need it up in these special symbols?
A lot goes on.
There's a lot going on. I mean, a lot going on. And in fact, like the endowment ceremony involves this ritualistic clothing changes throughout, right? Like you're backstage at a concert.
Well, you have to switch your talk about anxiety inducing. Okay, the men have to wear these little baker's caps and the women have to wear a veil. And, veil your face at various points because you shouldn't be seen. This is one good reason to buy your clothes. Like I said, my mother-in-law bought me and my husband a set of temple clothes. You keep this in your house. Can you imagine if you died and someone was like going through your art? What is this? What is this? It's a green apron with like satiny with a fig leaf embroidered pattern because it represents the fig leaves that Adam and Eve used to cover themselves.
Jeez.
So with the veil, because I'm so germophobic, I would not want anyone else's veil in my breathing space. I know they're laundered and they're clean, but it was a good thing I had my own, is what I'm saying. And then you have these robes, these like ceremonial robes, but they've got like an epaulette on the shoulder. You can't really see it. It's just kind of sewn in. That I think signifies like, because at one point the robe is on your left side and it like ties on the side. And then at one point in the ceremony, you have to switch the robe from your left side to your right side to signify that you are going,
That
you
you
know,
crossed
going through the
some.
steps, right? Yeah,
Wow.
you're upping your ante, whatever. And at that point, the women either veil or unveil their faces. This is all online if people care. And then the men have to switch their hat around because there's like a little string. It's so you're looking at the person you love and you're like, your eyes are like not meeting, but they're mentally meeting because you're on the other side of the room. You can't even look at each other. Also, you're so ashamed
You're
that you're
so
participating
embarrassed.
in this. You're like, we're mentally ill. We have to be mentally ill. It's such a mindfuck. So the point is, I've talked to my sisters about this. The only thing you most want is to not be the last one fucking with their robes. Because you have to stand up, switch your robes around, retie your apron, your sash. You've got all this nonsense going on. Bits and pieces of fabric here and there. You've got a fucking little envelope that it all came in, like a fabric sachet. And if you're the last one standing, you just feel like such a twat. You're like, just get me out of it. So really, when they go, okay, you must
Race
now
to-
change your robes, everybody is like rushing. I swear to God, unless you're obstinate and you're like, oh, I won't be rushed. I'll be the last one.
I am
Everyone's
at one with my.
We're not moving on until this sash is perfect. You're supposed to be like so pure in mind in a temple, right? You're supposed to, you think like all your thoughts are being read by angels. So you're like, if I even have so much as a dirty thought in here, it is going to be the worst for me, right? It's going to be like so much worse than having dirty thought in the world. Well, Jess, it's like that experiment where they say, don't think about a pink polar bear.
Right. And
You're not thinking about pink polar bear, right? Okay. Obviously, you think the dirtiest thoughts in the temple because you're like, I cannot think any dirty thoughts. What? Like what? Your brain goes, what kind of?
and then your brain's like, all of
Yeah.
these.
You're like, oh my God, get out of here. I wish I could have a transcript of what my thoughts were like in the temple.
Which is why another reason why you and I will both be in outer darkness. But I have to say,
Yeah, and you can't go to the temple with someone you actually like enjoy and get along with, or you'd both be in stitches. But go with your parents, you'll be fine.
go with people who are going to keep you sober. Well, I mean, so what Hannah's described is incredible, I have to say, and don't forget that with the costume changes and the sashes switching shoulders, there are secret handshakes and passwords that you have to go through with each, like I guess the handshakes are called tokens. Is that right?
Tokens and symbols, yeah.
And at various points, you covenant to give everything that you have to the church if required. And I'm not kidding there. But even more upsetting about this whole process is until 1990, the ceremony included penalties where participants pantomimed cutting their throats and disemboweling themselves if they revealed the sacred signs and tokens. Saying that again, different way. Members were literally miming their own deaths if they broke temple secrecy. But the church removed this, shockingly, because pretending to slit your own throat wasn't the PR win that they had hoped it would be. The ceremony does still include promises to never reveal what happens in the temple. Another reason Hannah and I are destined for outer darkness. But members are told these things are too sacred to discuss, even amongst themselves outside of the temple. So they're saying it's sacred, not secret. After the endowment, Hannah already described the celestial room, this all-white place. It represents the celestial kingdom, which we talked about in the last episode, if you want to go listen to that one. So this is where members sit in quiet meditation and supposedly commune with God after completing the ritual. So after all this buildup, you have the interviews, the ritual washing, the costume changes, the handshakes. You get to go sit in an all-white room and meditate. That's it, right? That's the climax.
I think if it was all white, that would be nicer than what it is. I think it's really gaudy. I think it's sort of like gold accented, and there's probably a ceiling painting of like, the elements. An all white room, in my recollection, would be preferable to what it actually is.
Yeah, when I did the baptisms for the dead, it was definitely all white. There were some gold accents, like you said, but all the furniture, the carpet, the floor was white, 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 stark white.
Well, I had high expectations, like I said, because my mum had told me that the first time she went to the temple, she said that she had the feeling like this must be what heaven's like in the celestial room. And so, I mean, that sounds like
Oh,
big promises. That sounds amazing. I shouldn't have known better than to take my mum at her word. I'm just like, why did I think that it would be the way that they said it was?
no. Yeah, it never is, but so you do all of this, you get through, and what comes next? Well, once you've received your endowment, you're expected to wear temple garments for the rest of your life. So the temple garments are the special underwear that most people are familiar with that Mormons wear. The faithful Mormons are going to wear these 24/7 under their regular clothes. As Hannah mentioned, the garments have these symbolic markings sewn into them that correspond to things that you learn about in the endowment ceremony. Now, the church loves to compare their garments with the Jewish talit katan. So, this is a religious undergarment worn daily, but there's a key difference. Jewish tzitzit are fringes that literally hang from the corners. So, they're outside as visible reminders of God's commandments. And they're literally following a biblical instruction to put tassels on your clothes. Mormon garments have secret Masonic looking symbols sewn into the fabric that you're not supposed to talk about. So one is fulfilling the Old Testament commandment, and the other is really, I, I don't know, Joseph Smith got creative after he joined the Freemasons. So as I said, they wear them 24/7. You wear these garments day and night. You take them off only for bathing, for swimming, exercising, and sex, basically. A lot of women will wear them during medical procedures like childbirth because you still need God's protection, which is what you get by wearing the garments. So you'll see that it affects everything from, as I mentioned, clothing choices, but also comfort. You've got to have those on if you're a devout Mormon, knowing that you're wearing your garments underneath your clothing offers you this kind of sacred special protection.
And we will talk when we get more into Mormon folklore about all the stories of garments saving people's lives, garments deflecting bullets, protecting you from burns. If you take it seriously, the promises are real. So the garments are sacred. And you are not allowed to let them touch the floor. If you take them off, you don't just toss them on the floor. You would place them in the laundry basket. You kind of treat them with reverence. They're not just like regular everyday clothes. I know people who have said that in their families it was really taken to the letter of the law. Like if you were bathing, you would practically have the garment like hanging off your big toe off the side of the bathtub because you have to have it on at all times. I personally don't know anybody that extreme. I mean, my parents were pretty extreme about, you can't make excuses to not wear the garment, right? Because obviously the idea is if you're living to the spirit of the law and not the letter of the law, you're not looking for excuses to take your garments off. We talked a little bit last episode about temple marriage is being sealed for time and eternity. So it is really the eternal ordinance that determines whether or not you will fulfill the measure of your creation, which is to become gods and goddesses and rule your own planets and start the whole cycle all over again. And in those instances, you'll be the Heavenly Father and the Heavenly Mother, right? And it just goes on in perpetuity. But in reality, we have a situation in Mormon culture where really families are so devastated by this edict that only certain people can enter the temple, but the temple is where you must be married. And it creates a very cultic us versus them mentality. It's a
Yes.
divide, which has caused so much pain in families.
Right. I mean, it's like, and I'm not exaggerating on the age. A 19-year-old Mormon girl gets engaged, right? Her non-Mormon dad, who raised her and helped her become the amazing young woman she is, he cannot walk her down the aisle and he can't witness her marriage. Her Mormon grandparents, who maybe lost their temple recommends for drinking coffee or not meeting the 10% tithing threshold, they also have to wait outside. Her best friend who left the church, she can't go. Instead, everybody gets to either sit outside the temple or in the waiting room or in their cars while the wedding happens without them. And that's just yet another reason I left the church, because nothing screams, families are forever, like making your non-Mormon dad wait in the parking lot
Right.
during the most important day of your life because he doesn't have the right membership card. But the actual temple wedding ceremony and my sister went through, and sure, it's really brief and sterile compared to the traditional weddings. There aren't bridesmaids, there aren't groomsmen, no music, no flowers. The couple just kneels across from each other across an altar while a temple worker performs the sealing ordinance. And they make covenants with God and each other using all prescribed language. You're not writing your own vows here. And the whole thing takes maybe 20 minutes. Am I on target there, Hannah?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to my temple sealing, which I said I was pregnant at the time, like quite pregnant. And I think I've blocked a lot of it out, but you were right on track.
Yeah. So after all that buildup, remember we talked about all of the stuff, the worthiness interviews and the special underwear, and now you're in this temple, which is really a multi-million-dollar marble palace. You get this 20-minute ceremony, no music, no flowers, no personal vows. Basically, it's like a DMV appointment, right? You come in, you do your 20-minute thing, and you're out.
Yeah.
So in the States, a lot of couples will hold a reception or like a ring ceremony for the people who couldn't attend the actual wedding. It's often at the local ward house, but it is explicitly not the real marriage in Mormon theology. The temple sealing is the only one that counts for time and all eternity. I mentioned, earlier, like baptisms for the dead, and how impressed I was to learn that as you're going through the temple again, that you're doing it on behalf of someone else. Temples aren't just for living people to get their own ordinances. A huge part of temple work involves ordinances for dead people, one that obviously I just learned out today. So, yes, Mormons see dead people, just like in the Sixth Sense. No, actually, they don't see them, but they definitely believe they're there, waiting in spirit prison for their proxy baptism, which is somehow creepier, right?
Talk about spirit prison enough.
No, it
I
is
haven't heard
not.
spirit prison for a long
Damn
time.
it, we must do an episode.
Yeah, let's talk about
But
spirit
this is like, as I talked about earlier, this is where the baptisms for the dead come in. I did this, Hannah. I think you did baptisms for the dead, right?
for sure.
Yeah. So living Mormons get baptized on behalf of deceased people with the belief that the dead person's spirit can then choose to accept or reject the ordinance. So as a teenager, I remember doing this. But they'd like put all the teenagers who were worthy in a van and like drive us over to the temple and shuffle us in. The temple worker, when it was your turn, would basically rush through a name, like dunk me under, yank me up where I'd catch my breath, and then rush through another name, dunk me again, and like blessing, dunk, like 25 times in a row. So it was like spiritual whack-a-mole, basically. I would just get dunked and the deceased would get saved whether they wanted to be or not. So, as Hannah mentioned, members also perform endowments, sealings, and other temple ordinances for dead people. So they research, she mentioned her parents would have names. They research family history extensively. I mean, I can remember my mom's genealogy book, right? To find ancestors who need their temple work done.
Mm-hmm. I love that about Mormons. I so appreciate their meticulous record keeping. It makes my research
Great
so much easier.
archivists. Yeah.
I love it. In a nutshell, the church has performed millions of these proxy ordinances for Holocaust victims, famous people, historical figures, people from other religions. All of this, of course, like, is non-consensual. And all of this is illustrative of a mindset that assumes that obviously our way of being in the world is the only way, it is the only path to heaven. Obviously, we know this to be true, and that dead people are waiting for moments to save them. So if that is offensive to you in this life, sorry about it, but your ancestor needs releasing from spirit prison.
Yes. And Mormons have got to do it. So I just want to highlight in case you missed it. Hannah mentioned the Mormon church decided that people who were murdered for their Jewish faith really needed posthumous Mormon baptisms. The audacity is breathtaking. You can look this up, get on the internet. It was a big, to use Hannah's word, kerfuffle when people found out outside of the church. All of all of this effort that we're going through in the temple and all of these ceremonies and covenants, it's part of what the church now calls the covenant path. So the idea is that you have to follow a specific path of covenants and ordinances, baptism, the endowment, marriage sealing, to return to God. So the temple is your physical representation of that path. And your recommend, as Hannah mentioned, might just be a handwritten ticket. We don't know. It's probably on an app these days.
But remember, these things are sacred, not secret. So the fact that you are not allowed to talk about these things just means that they're too holy and special and spiritual to discuss casually, which is why you can't be told what happens beforehand. Because, from the outside, this looks like textbook cultic mind control, right? Passing words in a way where, to create a distinction between sacred and secret, but you determine really the meaning of those words, okay? It's so insidious, right? Because if you don't know what is happening in these sacred ceremonies, it doesn't matter what you call them. The fact of the matter is they are secret, okay?
Yes.
So you've got this, obviously, a flow of information is not like unilateral. Obviously, this goes without saying. Church leaders control what members know when they need to know it. So if you are making a major life decision, like getting married, going on a mission, you just don't know what you're committing to before you
Right.
go to the temple. And I remember my older sister went through the temple before she went on her mission, and it really made her rethink, even, why am I going on a mission? Because this is too fucked up beyond words. And my dad just came in and he said all the things that apologists say, right? Like all the things that you know what to say to make people doubt their doubts and push down the intuition and the gut instinct and the knowledge inside of yourself that says, this is not the tea. This is not right.
Yeah. As Hannah talked about that information, asymmetry. It's like the temple creates a hierarchy of knowledge and spiritual status within the church. So temple worthy members are seen as more faithful and more spiritual than the people that are not temple worthy. Having a temple recommend becomes like a social status symbol, basically. And if you lose your recommend, you are shamed and you are socially isolated. It's that caste system that I mentioned earlier at work again. It divides members into those who are temple worthy and those who are not. And I just have to say, so much for all are alike unto God, which is something we learned in primary, right? The secrecy also means that if something in the temple ceremony troubles you, you don't have a lot of people that you can talk about it with. You can't discuss it with non-members. You're discouraged from discussing it with other members outside the temple. And if you express doubts, oh, there's Hannah's dogs barking, then you risk losing your recommend and your spiritual standing in the community, which matters a lot in Mormon culture. So let's talk about these buildings. Like the church is constantly building new temples. They currently operate over 180, I think was the last count I checked. Somebody might correct me by getting online and seeing that there are more, but I know there are many more under construction. So these buildings cost millions of dollars each, and they are built to very specific standards. Now, they're not all built the same. They often will reflect the local kind of architecture. In Hawaii, they're different than they are in Iowa, than they are in Germany. But the temples are all very ornate. They're built with expensive materials. They have custom furnishings, elaborate decorations. Often they are the most expensive buildings in their communities.
Yeah, the zoning issues around temples in neighborhoods that are currently ongoing, specifically related to steeple height and how the church is trying to circumvent city ordinances related to buildings in communities that are very strongly opposed to a building of a temple, like right in their backyard. You know, it's important to remember that, for Mormons, this isn't about practical kind of earthly considerations like steeple height, zoning laws, how much it costs, right? If you're doing what God told you to do and God is on your side, what do the earthly laws of man have to do with anything? What are city ordinances but something that are for you to get around because God is on your side? Did you forget that part where God is on your side?
Mhm.
And when God is on your side, anything you do is justified. Anything you do is, even if it's so shady, bordering on illegal, it doesn't matter. It is justified.
Because it's the one and only true church, right?
Right.
Now, I think that, the temple, in my mind, it serves as the ultimate expression of Mormon exclusivity and control, right? It promises the highest blessings to those that comply with all of the church demands and excludes everyone else who doesn't meet the standards. It creates this mystery and specialness around ordinary human experiences like marriage and spiritual contemplation. And it ensures that the most committed members are regularly participating in rituals that reinforce their separation from the outside world and their dependence on the church for their eternal salvation.
I mean, even really like looking at my parents' advice when my husband left the church and their advice was to like double down on my temple attendance. And I'm not blaming my parents for this because they are towing the line of what the church enforces, which is a masterclass in control, as you said, right? You have to prove your worthiness through invasive interviews that ask really personal questions about your thoughts. I just can't get past somebody telling you really like what you need to think and what you need to feel to be a worthy human, right? You have to make promises, vows that you cannot discuss, the penalties of which are extreme.
Hmm.
You have to wear special clothing that separates you as different, okay, given a new name, Cultic 101. Ritualistic separation from the outside world binds you closer to the church. When you were talking about picturing a 19-year-old whose family is excluded from her ceremony, I was thinking, and the people who are there now get all the bonding and all the good feeling. It's with those people. So that when you think about those special moments in your life, it was with those people, not your family. The entire process just actually is designed to create you to be more dependent on the institution. Sorry, it's garbling my words there, but
No, no, you got it. I mean, that you really got it. Mormon temple culture right there. It's a system of exclusivity. It's wrapped in claims of sacredness, where your worthiness is constantly evaluated, and your most important life events, they can exclude people that you love the most. So, next time, we'll be diving into worthiness interviews in more detail, one of my favorite subjects. If you watch our TikTok, you'll know. So, those are personal interrogations, as I mentioned earlier, that determine whether you're spiritually qualified to participate in these temple ordinances at all.
absolutely. That confession booth that you're sending your 8-year-old into
Mm.
with a driving instructor. I always use that example. My bishop was a driving instructor. I'm just saying. My bishop was a driving instructor. The questions you get asked are probably more invasive than you think. Till then, remember, if someone tells you the most important parts of their life are just too sacred to talk about, just might want to ask yourself what exactly makes it too sacred to share.
Right. Well, thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, you can follow us on TikTok at Postmormon Postmortem or on the web at postmormonpostmortem.com.
And on Instagram at the same. And if you didn't like what you heard, you can just forget this ever happened. Until then, remember, if you left last week, if you left last year, if you left last decade, it doesn't matter. You belong here. No temple recommend required.
Hey, Hannah. Sorry for what I said when I was Mormon.
I'm sorry for what I said when I was Mormon too.